The new environment works on the same basis as the old one. Feel free to check that video out. It explains in great detail how the old system works and how new cells of walls and floors are created around the player. Instead of talking about that again, I'd like to focus on what makes this new space unique. Because in a way it originates from the same system, but uses an idea that is directly opposite to the original method. The old stuff generates more or less randomly, filling a preset chunk of space with a random collection of walls. The doors between these cells are then also randomly spread throughout, creating very similar but ever slightly changing maze. The new environment is much more strict and direct. A new path is made out of small individual chunks where each one has a well-defined shape, so you have straight paths, corners and junctions. The script then looks around and figures out if there are any other cells that it has to connect to. Based on this info, it selects the appropriate shape to fit into the overall environment or creates a new path for other cells to follow. This is achieved by placing special objects at the edges of each cell. Each cell has exact dimensions, it's 20 meters by 20 meters. The middle of each edge of this square forms a connection point to other nearby cells. Each cell gets created with a set of objects that dictate connections to other cells. There is either an invisible helipad indicating a valid connection, or a VR marker indicating an invalid connection. Each possible shape has these objects defined and carefully placed along with the walls, floors and ceilings. When a new cell is created, it looks at the middle of each edge for existing connection points. If there's a nearby cell that already exists, it will have an object placed here. Based on which object it is, the shape of this new cell is decided. If a neighboring cell has an invalid connection, it means that there is no path to the other cell from here, meaning you cannot connect the two cells, so you cannot form one part of a path, and the new cell must also form an invalid connection there. On the other hand, if there is a valid connection from the neighboring cell, it means that the neighboring cell has created its part of the path here, and I can't leave it hanging. So the new cell must create a valid connection to that point. And if there's nothing, the neighbor cell doesn't yet exist, and I can just toss a coin. The final mission does favor making new paths, but still it's up to random chance. This means that a new cell ends up with 4 pieces of information about connections to other cells, one for each possible direction. Based on that, I can quickly decide which shape to pick to fit all the requirements. The way I calculate this information into a specific shape of the environment is based on binary numbers. If you ever worked or learned about these in school, this will be very familiar to you. I have 4 values, each one can be either true for a valid connection or false for an invalid one. I can get any combination of these values, but I know that they can always come in a specific order. I can decide that the connection to the north will always be searched first, then the one to the south, and so on. This gives me 16 possible combinations I can get, and each combination gives me an exact description of the shape I need. Knowing that I must connect to the north and south, while not connecting to the east and west, means that I must create a straight line going along the y-axis. All I need to do now is assign a value to each direction, or its power if you wish. North can have the power of 1, east has the power of 2, west the power of 4, south the power of 8. That way I can multiply the value of each connection by this power. If there's no connection to be made, my value is 0 and it will remain at 0 even after the multiplication. By doing this bit of math, I get a number that is unique for every possible combination of connections that I get, any number between 0 and 15, and this number will always tell me exactly which shape I need. For those who are still a bit lost, I basically just converted a number from binary to decimal. Okay, so now I have this number. Doesn't really help me with making a connection, does it? Well, it does actually. I set out numbers between 0 and 15 and know which exact shape corresponds to each number. I can prepare each shape in advance, sort these shapes into an array, and then I just take my number and pick an element from that array with the index of my number, and there it is, the exact shape I need. So I can just spawn that in and have a working system for creating paths. Of course, with more work and effort I could create variations for each shape and either roll a random chance to pick any of the possible shapes, or roll a random chance to add +20 to my number and have a second set of shapes in the array after the first one, or any other solution for more variation. Now in my mission I wanted to create this repeating sense that should make the player question whether they made any progression. It's just another way to hammer home the point that this place doesn't have an exit. That was the main goal for me, to show that you can't just walk away. The old system does this by confusing your sense of direction and constantly shifting its shapes and door positions. Now I wanted to make something with the same idea but different execution, so the new system can repeat itself and make you think that you are just walking in some cycle, never reaching anywhere. Maybe making a mod in another game I could go even further and come up with some other way to create interesting stuff, but working within Arma's limits, yeah, you have to think about those as well while coming up with these kind of ideas. Anyway, that's pretty much how the new environment works. There's a small layer that's one cell wide between the old environment and the new one, and the only reason for that is that it aligns all the exit doors from the cell to align with the new system. This is done so that the older office space always fits into the new maintenance spaces. Yeah, that's pretty much it.